Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session this afternoon. It's great to see everybody joining us. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to just log on, and my panelists are going to be joining us as soon as they get to be a little bit less camera shy and want to get their cameras on. You'll see their faces too. But we're so excited to have so many people having logged on today. Very, very happy to be able to interact with the industry once again. Already we've got about 43 people online. So as we're loading up, I will take some time to introduce my panelists and introduce ourselves. And we've got an exciting conversation today. And I think we're happy to be sharing with everybody today. So a very good afternoon on behalf of AXO and EXA. A warm welcome to another exhibition industry update. And today, of course, the focus is on the exhibition challenge. I'm really glad to be joined by my committee members who've all worked tirelessly on our project. We all realized that such an endeavor would require a very reliable team to manage putting our case to government together for the exhibition challenge when we took this on. And based on the skills we felt were needed, the 5 volunteers you see in front of you here today formed this core committee and have collectively brought in a solid set of skills to drive this process. As you all know, I'm Prajani Patha. I'm the chairperson of AXO and the spokesperson for the SA Event Council. I am also the MD of Exposure Marketing. I have obviously been, as you've all seen, the face and the voice of the challenge for the past year, ensuring that we're being heard. And I've had great contacts with the media, which has obviously secured us a lot of significant airtime for our industry, which has helped our cause a great deal in ensuring that we build confidence amongst corporate business in South Africa, SMEs, and government as large as well. And as you all know, I run consumer exhibitions, so I've been the voice of the consumer exhibitions on this particular committee. Joining me as well, you'll see, is Tisetso Tao, who's also an AXO board director. He also represents us on the South African Event Council, and he's the managing director of Synergy Events. Tisetso's strong network and deep empathy and his understanding of the workings of government, our government principles, has played a pivotal role in securing engagements and directing our approach during our committee sessions and our meetings with government. And obviously his background in managing exhibitions for both trade and consumer has ensured that the proposal met the need of this category of organizers. And then next up, we have the beautiful Jill Gibbs, who is the past chair of EXA and the past chair of the South African Event Council of recent. She's also the CEO of Blue Cube and has been in this industry for many, many years. Jill's awareness and knowledge of the entire ecosystem and of course the relevant legislation has been paramount in ensuring the proposal is accurate. She's also safeguarded our suppliers and contractors' voice and validating suggested protocols in the proposal to ensure it was realistic for this group of stakeholders. And then I'm sure you all know the very, very familiar face of Justin Hawes, who's always present for everybody and always very supportive. He's the president of IFAS, representative on the South African Event Council and the EGF, and is the managing director of Scan Display. Justin's strong financial background has ensured that the fundraising process was managed appropriately and that the business elements of the undertaking that we have undertaken were suitably administered. Obviously, Justin's international network and affiliations as well allowed us to tap into many case studies and best practices internationally. And lastly, my co-partner in crime, my vice chair, Devi Paulson. She's the vice chair of AXO and the vice president of DMG Events. And now Devi has a long background in our industry as well. But before that, she was a journalist and she drove the research process and the compilation of the proposal, giving it an international lens and a global context. Obviously, with her DMG background and being the vice president of DMG, held great weight for us with this proposal. And she has represented the business-to-business trade exhibition organizers' needs in our efforts. So a very welcome to all of them. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm going to give all of you a chance. But before we do that, now that everybody knows who's on, glad to see some comments and some greetings coming up on the chat there. Thank you all for joining us. We are sitting on almost 60 people. And we know that these are 60 people that are really passionate about the industry and knowing what's happening. And believe me, in front of you, you have a team that is equally passionate to ensure that we reopen. Now, just to set the scene before we get into the discussion and we can, tell you all about our proposal, let me just give you a little bit of a background into how we came about this. So, in 2020, 14 associations collaborated, right, to form the South African Events Council. And we've all worked tirelessly to reopen the event industry. We've had ongoing communication with DSAC, that's the Sports, Arts and Culture, Department of Tourism, Department of Health, South African Tourism, and NEDLAC to advocate for our industry's reopening. And as you all know, events, unfortunately, were labeled as gatherings and therefore super spreaders. In March, April this year, after numerous efforts to lobby government with no success, AXO and ICSA, we moved to address government legally. We reached out to all members from AXO and ICSA, and we invited them to participate or explore the legal options to ensure our reopening. And our first option was, of course, to seek crowdfunding, because we knew that this was not going to be a cheap affair, let's put it that way. And based on our initial costs we received, we needed to get substantial funding. We were very pleased to note that 20 companies agreed to support the fund, and we raised a total of 103,000 Rand. For those who weren't able to support us financially, we respected that many of our members did not feel that engaging in legal options was the right approach as well. And some people wanted to support us, but they couldn't do so financially. And we respected that and understood that as well. But they were there to support us nevertheless. And despite not being able to raise the millions we needed from the industry, we believe that that point, that juncture that we came to, helped us to get government's attention. So to date, we have presented our case to the Special Advisor of COGTA, Dr. Gopalan Padiachi, and he's been really forthcoming in his support and direction for our industry. COGTA, as you know, is the Department of Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs. We've subsequently drafted a reopening proposal, which was submitted in August this year. And we're pleased to report that our proposal has been presented to the National Joint Operational and Intelligence Structures, which is referred to as NAT joints. And they put measures in place to ensure the safety and security of South Africans. So our proposal will be further discussed with the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture and the Department of Tourism before presenting to Cabinet. So that is a mouthful from me. So before we go into the questions, I'm just going to ask my colleagues to just say a quick hello and an introduction before we head on into the questions. For those of you that have questions for us, we do have a Q&A panel on the box there. I know many of you are keen to put it into the chat, but let's keep the chat for your networking purposes. And if you can, please direct your questions on the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So let's start with Jill.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody is safe and well out there. It's great to see the passion and the input on this panel. And thank you, Progeny, for the opportunity for us to showcase all the hard work that we've been doing as the exhibition challenge from as early as April this year. That's how long this journey has been with the panelists that are sitting on today's panel. As if everybody does know me, I am Jill Gibbs. I was past chair of EXA and past chair of the SA Events Council, and I'm the CEO of Blue Cube and the Concept G group of companies.
Thank you, Jill. T?
Yeah, thanks, Progeny. Hi to everyone, and thanks for the opportunity. As Progeny said earlier, my name is Dise Jotao, and I'm part of the obviously the committee that's been put here together to kind of drive the reopening, and I'm also managing director of Synergy Business Events. Also played a role on the South African Events Council, and basically I've been one of the members behind the driving force of making sure that we reopen. And thanks for the opportunity, Progeny.
Pleasure. Justin?
Yeah, thanks, Progeny. Really great to be here. I'm not any board member of EXA or AXO. Actually the president of the IFES, which is the International Federation of Exhibition Event Suppliers, which is a worldwide organization of 300 companies that build exhibition stands for each other throughout the world. And it's really great. You know, I'm president, which is wonderful. First time there's ever been a president from a developing country, and first time there's been a president from Africa. So it's really, you know, with that kind of exposure, it's been quite frustrating for me because I do see a lot of other initiatives throughout the world, and I see that we are lagging. So this was a great initiative to get involved in. And thank you for, thanks for the collaboration that we've had with EXA. It's really been great. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Justin. Devi?
Good afternoon, everybody, and to my colleagues in the panel. Great to see you again, which we've been seeing each other quite a lot of the last few months. Really good to be representing, I think, B2B trade exhibitions, and you know, I've definitely had my hat on for our industry as we've had these deliberations. And yeah, I think looking forward to just unpacking with our colleagues across South Africa how the process has unfolded and where we're at, and looking forward to sharing some good news hopefully along in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful. Right, now I'm going to shoot straight through to the questions now, and we're going to start in the beginning. We're going to take you through the journey with the questions, and I hope they will answer all of your questions, and if not, feel free, like I said, to put it onto the Q&A and we will answer them. Jill, I'm going to start with you. So you represented EXA on the South African Events Council. Just to set the tone so that people understand, why did AXO and EXA need to approach government separately? After all, South African Events Council has been liaising with government over the past 20 months. Why is there such an interest in making this differentiation that an exhibition is not an event?
Thank you, Progeny. So I think to your point earlier and giving the background of the SA Events Council, without the work and the collaboration of all of the Federation of Associations that make up the SA Events Council, we would not be sitting on this panel today. We would not be where we are today. So the efforts and the work that has been done since March 2020, when the SA Events Council was formed, cannot be diluted. They are respected, and they have basically been the building blocks for where we are. What transpired in this collaboration is that we created one collective voice, which needed to be done for government to be able to sit up and take notice of us. And I think if any of the associations had tried to do it on their own bat, they perhaps would have still been struggling along the way. So there definitely is strength in numbers, and that's really what we've presented here in terms of the force. Having said that, the industry is a very complex symbiosis of different players and role players and stakeholders. And one can't take the industry and say, okay, everybody must stay closed because government says so because of the national state of disaster, and then not look into the nuances of the different sectors within that industry and say, wait a moment, let's have a look and see if one of the aspects or elements of this industry can actually open and work. And what does that mean and translate into for the rest of the players within that community? So this is where we were led to. So first off, as chair of EXA, as chair of AXO, as the president of IFES, and whoever holds these positions, we are compelled to serve our members first and foremost of our associations. And since COVID hit the country, we've been serving the greater community, not just our members. And it's necessity is the mother of invention. Everybody's in the same storm in different boats, and we've all worked together as a collective and trying to push the phased reopening approach. So basically in this, what we saw was that shopping malls were open. And I know from my personal experience, I had to go to Sandton on one particular Saturday. I hadn't been for months. And I stood at the end of the aisle and I looked down and I said to Andrew, my business partner and husband, this is an exhibition. The stores are the exhibition stands. The people walking into the stores are the exhibitors, the attendees. And the store people and owners are, and people serving are the actual exhibitors. And everybody was obviously following their own protocols in terms of distancing, walking, making sure they weren't walking with each other unless they knew each other or they were in families. And they were engaging in the shops, wearing masks, sanitizing. And it just makes perfect sense. And it made perfect sense to AXO and to EXO to say, it's time that we start pushing this narrative to government so that we can illustrate to them what an exhibition is, what does a trade show entail, and what does it mean when we say we want a phased approach to it, or we suggest and recommend a phased approach. So that's really where we came to. If we had waited, then I think it would have been to the detriment of a lot of us. Already we've had 18, almost 19 months of absolutely no activity in our particular sector. And that has decimated our industry and individuals and freelancers and companies. And some people have left and closed and may never come back again. So we needed to say, what does the exhibition landscape look like for us now? And how do we propose this to government to do this phased approach? And once we've done that, we can start saying, this is what an exhibition actually is. It's not an event, first and foremost. Second of all, it's not a super spreader. It's not a mass gathering. It cannot be equated with churches and people getting together in a music festival or live event scenario. An exhibition is controlled, regulated, and organized. And it comprises attendees that are professional and like-minded people that want to do business and network with other people. So that became very critical and very crucial. And as I said, the analogy of using the shopping mall and the retail experience became very, very prevalent to us as stakeholders and role players within the exhibition and trade show sector. AXO and EXO were pushing for a 50% venue capacity, and the idea was to show government what does that look like, not to open up overnight, and what are the various stages and what are the parameters around us having that opening. So it came to the stage where we could open our part of our sector and we could feed to the rest of the sector, being audiovisual, decor, furniture, infrastructure, so that everybody gets a piece of the pie as the phased approach opening rolls out.
Agreed. And I think just to reiterate there as well, so you all know, we have a whole host of suppliers in our industry, and our suppliers don't only support exhibitions, they support conferences, they probably do live events, they do festivals, there's various events that they can support as suppliers. And I think we just felt that the big ask from the SA Event Council as well is quite a big ask, and it's quite probably threatening to government, because you're asking for all of these event sectors to be opened at one time. And I think as a committee, we saw the gap in that exhibitions could be separated from it. And if we were allowed to open, then we allow that supplier ecosystem to start working, to start reigniting those businesses. So as each part of the event sector opens up, they are still there and they're able to support it. So that is how this all evolved. Now, we established that, and then we decided we need to take this legally, because we've been writing letters for so long, and that wasn't working. Government wasn't willing to interact with us or give us their ear. T, if you can add, at this point in time, I'd like to maybe ask you this question in terms of when we decided to go the legal route. We initially went with Mabuza attorneys. Can you give us an idea in terms of why we chose that direction to go with Mabuza attorneys particularly and not anybody else, and how would that have helped our cause?
Sure. So Simon, I think in our initial engagement with the attorneys, we obviously went for, and with all due respect to the attorneys that we approached at the time, we went for like a no-name brand kind of attorney. And, the feedback that they gave us is that, it probably would take in the region of about 3 to 6 months for us to get any traction from government. At the time, obviously what Jill said, getting pressure from the industry, a little bit frustrated with the fact that we're not getting any attention. We couldn't wait for that long. And we then opted to, through obviously various networks, we then opted to go with Mabuza Attorneys. And that proved to be quite successful in terms of we wanted a heavy hitter attorney that could get us, in front of the queue and get government to start talking to each other. So not only from a legal perspective, but also from an influence perspective. And it's quite key that when you possibly do deal with government, you also realize that recognition and influence go hand in hand with obviously what you're doing, right? We then opted to go with Mabuza Attorneys, and it paid off, right? Albeit quite expensive. It did pay off from a sense that when we drafted the letter to Mabuza Attorneys, the letter was landed in the right people and was read by the right people, and we got subsequent feedback. I think the feedback took somewhere between a day or two or so. And that for me was, progress in the right direction, because I think the intention was never to go legal with government, but rather the intention was to bring government to the negotiating tables by using Mabuza Attorneys, right? Should, and if obviously we didn't get any traction from from government through Mabuza Attorneys, then we would have considered other legal avenues, which I don't think would have been the right kind of way to kind of lobby government at the time. So we approached Mabuza Attorneys, they drafted a letter, and that's how we eventually literally got to speak to the powers that be. People who are at the forefront of drafting regulations, people who are at the forefront of really lobbying and speaking to the powers that be, i.e. all the way up to the ministers, the cabinets, the command council, and the people that really drive the messages that eventually come out when we have a family meeting through the president. So I think we kind of jumped a few hoops because of our engagement with Mabuza Attorneys, and we're quite grateful for that.
Thank you, and agreed. I think it led us to dealing with people that we hadn't dealt with before in the past few months during our journey with the South African Event Council. We were dealing with people that, like Tisetso has just mentioned now, that set the regulations. And that was very important. And I think we also realized through that process that these governments still did not understand the exhibition industry. And there was a lot of work for us to do to get them to understand that exhibitions are not events. But before we went on to draft this proposal and take on the journey with Eric Mabuza, we needed to raise some funds. And like Tisetso has just mentioned now as well, we wouldn't be able to go the full hog, but we needed to get the ball rolling. So Justin, you drove this part of the campaign in terms of the fundraising. And I know you worked really, really hard and had to pick up the phone, and it was a really challenging experience. But just so everybody understands, what was the response from the industry when you spoke to each of our most of our members directly who got to speak to you?
Oh, thanks, Progeny. Call me a good debt collector. Anyway, it was, obviously we needed to get the money, we said, within a week. So I think you guys gave me the go ahead on the Monday, and by the Friday we'd reached over 100,000 rand in a pledge, and then we needed another week to get the money. So we needed pledges for a week, and then we needed another week to get everything. And I must say, it's been amazing. Of the money that was pledged, 98% of the pledge we actually got, which is wonderful, within a week. I think what I did was I picked on, I did a lot of, I obviously sent it on WhatsApp, on social media platforms, on AXO and EXA, but then I also picked up the phone. So I picked up people that I know in the industry and phoned them, and the support was really good. There were one or two companies that said it would be difficult for them because they felt that we needed to engage more with government. So there were some people that were quite opposed to it because it was felt that we shouldn't be challenging government. because government are our customers. It's a difficult situation we're in as an industry. It's not like the restaurant association where, the restaurants are, governments, they might have government individuals, but they don't have government customers directly. So, on that whole process, I phoned people I knew. I also phoned people who I thought, had the financial, clout as well, but I phoned across the board. And every contribution counted. So, some people contributed 500 Rand. That didn't matter. It wasn't about the amount. It was about the collective energy. So at the end of the day, I think we got to 35 or 40 people actually contributing, which is wonderful, in a short space of time. And also in a situation where we're all financially really distressed. So I was very impressed. I mean, we're an amazing industry. We know each other. There's a collaboration, and sometimes we're a little bit below the radar, which is one of the reasons sometimes we might have had this problem we're in. But we're an amazing industry. Everybody works together. Everybody knows everybody else. And there's a sense of community in our industry that's really beautiful.
Exactly. It was definitely a challenging time to be putting your hand out and asking for more, I suppose. And we, with all due respect to those that were able to support us financially, I think, and those who didn't, but their heart was in it, and you were there supporting us, with the team behind us, we appreciated that, and knowing that we had the industry's best interest in heart. So Devi, from your side, I want to know, in terms of, all of us are supporting the campaign, but DMG is an international company. Why did DMG choose to support this cause? Lots of companies that we came across that were not able to do this because of their international standing as well. How did you handle this as DMG?
Well, Justin told us to, so I had to.
He's a great debt collector.
I think as a global business, right from our board, our leadership, DMG are very, very committed to their investment in South Africa, and very committed to the South African story, and want to do whatever they can to support the recovery of the exhibition industry. Also believe that we can play a great role in providing some best practice and through our international experience in having this recovery and this rehabilitation happen efficiently. We've, as a business, have pretty much hosted an event in every continent now over the last 6 to 8 months. So I think there's a lot of experience we can share in that process. And I think it also, we're very true to the nature of what our business is, to our core. We believe in face-to-face events, and that is our business. So it is in our interest to see our business get back on track as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. Well, you have been crucial to this process, so we are all extremely, extremely grateful for everything that you've put into this, and we hope to reap the benefits soon. Tisette, so you and I obviously had that first meeting with government. These three just shoved us forward into the lion's den. And it was an interesting meeting. But after your meeting with government, did you still believe that we were on the right track with this cause that we were on?
Yeah, so before I get to that, Progeny, I just want to add on what Jill and Devi and Justin said about the fundraising component of it. I think it goes without saying that the quantum that was presented to us by Mabuza attorneys was never going to be achievable, right? They came in at a figure that's unbelievable, right? And I think as a sector, we cannot sort of compare ourselves to, I'll use an example, as the restaurant sector, because a little bit smaller than that, right? So we negotiated with Mabuza attorneys, and I must say that they helped as well, right? So for them, it was not about servicing a client, but helping a client, right? Yeah. So, their fees go into astronomical figures, right? And what we asked for, we got, right? We negotiated them down, and they accepted our negotiating because they understood our plight. Now, moving on to the meeting that we had with government. So, and my strategy, for those who know me, is that, my strategy in anything is rather have a seat at the table than negotiating from outside. Because when you do have a seat at the table, you are able to influence decisions in the way you think they need to be influenced, right? And I'll use an example. Well, I won't use an example, but I think our engagement with a very respectable person at Cocta meant that we had an opportunity to drive the messages on our behalf. It meant that he would lead the communication on our behalf. And he did so perfectly. And I think we did it in such a way that it was a back and forth communication between us. And I'm saying this person because I don't think that it'll be fair for me, Progeny, to kind of mention the person's name on the platform. But rest assured to everyone that we weren't playing in the lower levels of the league here. We were playing at a very high decision-making process where we were lobbying with the right people. And that's for me the key takeaway of the meeting that we had up front with government, that we had a seat at the table and we had an opportunity to educate the individual about our industry. Now, we also found out that during this meeting that this person needed a bit of education. They needed a bit of guidance because one of their challenges was that they had compared us with churches. Now, we had to, in that meeting, separate ourselves. What is the difference between an exhibition and a church? What is the difference between an event and an exhibition? So we had to also educate the individuals so that they are able to stand up and represent us correctly in the right forum. So I think the meeting was very much a very well-achieved meeting. We walked out of there, two prone approach Progeny, where we learned what they are thinking and they learned what we're thinking. So, and that's the collaboration that we asked in our conclusion with the meetings, that we want to work with you. Tell us what you need and let us guide you through the process of ensuring that you are able to represent us in the right forum, i.e. Command Council, Cabinet, etc., etc.
And to add to that, I don't know if many of you realize, but I'm sure you do when you listen to people, but if you talk to somebody about an exhibition, what is the first thing that comes to their mind? If you say you organize exhibitions, many people, believe it or not, including government, immediately think of art exhibitions as a first point of call. Sadly so. And it just shows how underrated and understood our industry is. It's like, it is really, really so sad. And it made us understand how much of education that needs to be done. So our proposal had to be really, really simple. So when we put together the proposal after Tisetso and I met with the Department of Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs, we had to feedback to the team and we ensured that all the right elements were there to break down the landscape, to explain what an exhibition actually is and go back to basics. So Jill and Justin and Devi and Tisetso, we all managed to do this. So Jill, I'm going to go to you now. So in terms of setting the landscape, let's unpack some of the stats that we presented to government on the exhibition industry in our proposal in terms of the economic impact.
So one of the things that we found since basically March 2020, when we started writing all of these letters to government and stakeholders and decision makers, is that the stats that we had were not really up to date. So I think we had stats that stemmed from 2018, 2019 Meetings Africa, Africa's Travel and Daba kind of scenario. So it's important as an industry that although it is engulfing our industry, when it does get going, it engulfs us because it's so time sensitive and there's so many deadlines to be met and you can't move those deadlines. One has to jump through many, many hoops and juggle many, many balls every single day of existence when the industry is under normal capacity. So it's important that we keep up to date with the stats and that we keep feeding that and obviously keep that going so that we've got it on tap when we do get faced with a situation like this. So the estimated total income from direct, indirect, and induced income is 75 billion rand. The direct spend accounted for is 24.4 billion of the total spend, and the jobs created over the period of this particular survey study totaled just under 153,000. Considering how many jobs and companies have been lost in the last 18 months, this further supports our recommendations for an urgent reopening with a phase structured approach to assist to alleviate the unemployment situation. Having said that, I think that a lot of our workforce may have already perhaps left the regions that they were working in and have gone back home in some respects and may not come back. And that also has quite a sort of pressing stress on us in terms of skill set and experience in the new landscape and in the new area. Total salaries paid to employees in the industry were approximately 13.5 billion rand. The approximate contribution to government taxes amounted to 3.3 billion rand. Financial contributions were in excess of 23 billion rand through the 1 million rand attendees attracted into the country, which accounted for a third of the industry's total contribution to GDP. The tourism and trade industry and competition departments play significant roles in the exhibition industry, overseeing international and domestic tourism promotion and development, national compliance standards for exhibitions, funding, and consumer protection. In 2019, the South African National Convention Bureau submitted 108 bids for exhibitions. It's massive. Tourism from exhibitions also helped sustain a notable 47,000 jobs, and 11.4% of foreign tourism was attributed to the exhibition industry. So if you take that into the context of the different companies within the sector, and if we specifically speak about a company like Concept G or Scan, a lot of the business comes from international audiences, and it's through the memberships of OSPI, IFAS, ESA, and the necessary players that work globally in the sector. But it's also about the individual companies that know about the reputation of custom building, manufacturing and designing houses, that they are going to ask them for support in terms of coming out and having exhibition stands built and events done. So as illustrated, the impact on the economy of closing the exhibition sector to this extended period of 18 months has been completely devastating.
So that, I mean, it is quite astounding, even though this data is, I think some of it goes back to 2015 and 2018, but still, it is still relevant because we were seeing a good growth in the exhibition industry. And that was important for us to note with government. So this set the basis for them to understand that we're not a Mickey Mouse industry, that we really, really have an impact on the economy as a whole. Justin, in our proposal, we played a key role in differentiating exhibitions from other industries. Do you want to just take us through in terms of why the need to differentiate us as such?
Yeah, thanks, Progeny. I just want to add on, you know, somebody spoke a little bit earlier about our industry and how little is known about our industry. And you spoke, often people think it's an art exhibition. It's an international problem. You know, I remember going to a talk some 15 years ago. Simon Burton was an exhibitor show. He was actually in South Africa. He was a speaker. And he said, try and tell your children's friends what you do. And your children also battle to tell their friends what you actually do. So, you know, and you laugh, it's a problem. So people don't understand, you know, we just like out there and we in the wilderness, you know, people don't, we're just a backroom industry. And it's like that throughout the world. I mean, even in Germany, which is a big exhibition industry, you know, people don't really understand it. So I think just in terms of our proposal, you know, in terms of what we did, I mean, obviously we made government aware of our industry and we told them the stats. So that was a key thing. But I think a couple of things. Firstly, you need months of planning. And I often think there's been a lot of talk about the restaurant industry. Why don't we do what the restaurant industry did? You can't, you know, our game's about planning and a long time in advance, a year or 2 years or 3 years. You can't just switch us on and switch us off. You know, a restaurant, you can switch on and then 2 or 3 days later, you can switch it off. Likewise with the liquor industry. So I think planning was very important and we need long planning. And that's why we need government to say, these are the levels and stay with that. This constant opening and closing has been detrimental and devastating for our industry. So, you know, I think that was very important. And, you know, even moving from 50 to 100 or 100 to 250, and let's hope it stays at 250, it's a problem. So planning is very, very important. I think another thing as well is that, you know, an exhibition is not a gathering. So an exhibition is you come to an exhibition and you move around. Whereas often in a gathering scenario, like a church event or even a conference, you come in there, you stay in the room. At a church event, you might sing or do whatever. In a conference, you in a confine. And, you know, the viral load is far greater in a conference and even far greater in a church thing. And I'm told singing is the worst thing for spreading viruses. Is the viral load is different. So an exhibition is you come in there, you have contact, but you don't have a long contact with everybody, and you move around. So, you know, exhibition is not a gathering, and we went to great lengths in our report to try and differentiate us from gatherings.
Absolutely.
And
thankfully,
you know,
Debbie and I sorry.
Yeah, and I think also, you know, we need an urgent phased reopening approach, not one of 100, 250, 100 again. Stick with the 250 or stick with the 200. You can't do that to us.
No, absolutely. Well, thankfully, Debbie and I stick to our karaoke at home, Justin, so we're safe there. But moving to Debbie. Now, Debbie was really, really instrumental in the drafting the proposal. Thankfully, her skills allowed it, so we left it in her hands, and we supported her with providing as much research and as much input as possible. So Debbie, take us through this proposal that we drafted in terms of the differentiations and the inclusions and the safety regulations. No singing allowed.
Well, I mean, I think it's safer for everyone to ensure that my karaoke is done behind closed doors, not in front of a gathering. I think my family would agree with that. Yeah, so I think, you know, just to re-emphasize, and I just don't think we can emphasize it enough, is that this entire process has really been an education. It's been an education for our government principals, but I think what I've taken out of this, just as a side note, is an education of how much we've actually got to start educating everybody about what it is we do and what our industry comprises. So I think this is a great challenge and opportunity for us as an industry to be doing a lot more in terms of actually blowing our own horn a little bit, because, you know, I don't think the value that we add is understood enough. So yeah, firstly it was around educating. But then I think also around reinforcing that we as an industry are actually so well placed to abide by any kind of regulation, because we do it already with our SASRIA regulations and that we have to abide by. And we are a very regulated industry. So unlike a church gathering, and it really does feel like we are single outing the poor churches at the moment, and that's really not the intention. We use this as an example, but unlike a church gathering that could happen at whim at any time, an exhibition can't. It has to go through approvals. We have to get specific licenses, for want of a better word, from our JOC. So there's a lot of regulation that happens in that process, and I think just to go to follow on from Justin's point is that we can't turn on and off like a tap. You know, you can cancel a church service day if you've got 2,000 or 3,000 people who've flown in from all over the world, and during a family meeting on Sunday you say, oh, we're gonna change our levels. You can't cancel that exhibition. So, and there's a couple of things at play there. One, obviously, it's the cost of resource and time, but then there's also the cost of the PR for our country as a whole. So we really wanted to focus on some of those areas, and then put some suggested safety regulations in place that are sensible. And I think what we did was use conventional wisdom, because we're doing this anyway as an industry, aren't we? We have very clear safety guidelines and regulations. And what we did is we've presented what we feel should be mandatory, and based on all. So during this process we looked at all the sectors, whether it was venues, whether it was suppliers, whether it was consumer exhibitions or trade exhibitions. We looked at things that we feel should be mandatory at specific levels, and then looked at what could be maybe recommended. So maybe some recommendations that could be taken under advisement. So yeah, I think what we did was put together something that is robust, and is sustainable, and it will future-proof us as well.
Debbie, I'm going to ask you at this point in time, because I don't want to run out of time, and this is one of the crucial part, but in terms of when we talk about a phased reopening, can you take us through that breakdown?
Yeah. And it goes back to all of our points from previously. It's around ensuring that no matter what, exhibitions can run. But what it does mean is that if we are under specific lockdown alert levels, there will be some adjustments that we as the industry will have to make that will be, again, that will be in our control, and easily to manage. And really, so what we've tried to do is firstly look at best practices from across the world, across the globe, through our colleagues, through our networks, and then take what we think are the best of the best practices. And I think that's what we've really done in the South African context, is looked at everything that we think is going to ensure our safety, is going to ensure our security, and ensure our livelihoods. So we'll be covering off on all, checking off on all boxes. So inherently, it is every single level. We can run an exhibition, but there will be specific exceptions that we'll have to make. So maybe the capacity will be smaller. And I know from my perspective, I would rather have a venue capacity overnight run from 50% to say 30% versus 50% to 50 people, because I can't host an exhibition at 50 people. So we went, and then what we did is we made it incredibly easy to understand. I think that is, keep it simple. We've kept it simple for us, for our industry, and for our government principals to understand. So I think our approach has been pretty good in terms of how we want to, and I think it's going to sustain us as an industry as well. And I think just to go back to that point, we don't want to be in a situation like, again, we're not picking on the restaurant industry, but like the restaurant and alcohol industry, where you move from pillar to post from day to day. Like, you don't actually know. Today you could be open, tomorrow you can't trade. Who knows? I think our very kind of long-term marathon approach rather than quick sprints has definitely served us well.
Exactly. Thank you. Tisa, so to date, after submitting this proposal to government, what has government's response been to the proposal so far?
So here's the thing, right? And I think for the first time, they've actually acknowledged that, they're looking at saving lives and also restoring livelihoods. So that's a positive that I think we can sort of take away from our last communication. But I think our proposal has obviously gone through the right people. We're part of the communication emails that go between one person to another, where our proposal is part of the attachment. So we see this. So it's not as if we, talking to a third person. We see what's happening in terms of the email correspondence. It has gone from the Ministry of COGTA, the Ministry of COGTA to the Ministry of DSAC. We know that. We saw that. And I think it's also the understanding of where our industry sits, right? And I think in the onset, we engage with the Department of COGTA, but I think in between there, we established that, hang on a sec, we also need to engage with the Department of Sports and Culture, right? So fortunately, we've opened the doors to speak to the DG of Department of DSAC. They have acknowledged and come back to us and say, look, we have seen your proposal, we're acknowledging your email. We want to sit down with you and have a communication and meeting with you, right? So up until yesterday, that meeting obviously has been, waiting for that meeting to be set up. But I have no doubt that that meeting will be set up quite soon, and it's going to be a small audience. And the purpose of that is to try and drive our purpose, right? We're no way trying to exclude people, but I think it'll serve us a good purpose if we try and get a small audience so that we can get the right kind of outcome in the meeting. And I'm happy to, obviously, with Progeny, share those kind of details when that meeting has happened.
Yep, and to re-emphasize there as well, I think it is important for what we're trying to get across is that an exhibition is a marketplace. That's what it is, where people come and buy and sell. So we're really trying to simplify the understanding. It is a marketplace, and just like a mall who's never ever closed, irrespective of no matter what level of lockdown you're on, so too can the exhibition industry. And like Justin says, and like Debbie, Angel, there's a flow of people. Our safety regulations are there, just like a mall has, there's a flow of people. It's those kind of simple understandings that we're trying to reiterate. And like Tisetso was just saying, in our next meeting, when we sit with the DG for Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, it's reiterating what we have suggested in the proposal to show them with greater detail how we will implement it. Devi, I know there was one point in particular, I know when we were sharing some of the suggestions that to the proposal in terms of boxing organizers and making the restrictions quite prescriptive. How did you work around that in the proposal?
Yeah, look, I understand that. I think I must take a step back, and I think government have an incredibly difficult job at the moment, because you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And I think what we wanted to be, and just to Tetsu's point, is be empathetic and see this as a partnership, and understand what the requirements are going to be from their perspective. So although there is some sense of prescription in that, yes, there in this legislation, it's no different to what it currently is in any event. So, for example, a 3-meter aisle. We have a 3-meter. We should be having a 3-meter aisle, shouldn't we? And at our exhibitions, but that ticks off a kind of our SAS RIO requirements. But government didn't know that this is actually what the requirements are for an exhibition in any event. So if we've legislated it, it's been sensible. It's been sensible based on what we would be doing or having to do anyway, and also having us as human beings, we want to be comfortable in a situation. I mean, I think at any specific time, we want our businesses to be up and running, but we also want to do so safely. And I would never want to be in a situation where I don't feel safe. So I think there is a level of prescription, but it's done with a very, very light touch, because we're kind of used to doing, because we have to manage our events with legislative health and safety rules in any event. What we also wanted to do is just, as I said earlier, speak to all the levels of our industry, and we did include things like, at venues currently. Based on the current restrictions, allowing venues to host more than one organizer at any given time, because currently they're not able to, because I think that would be heartbreaking if you're this very big venue and you can only host a small number of people. So what our suggestions and recommendations are, let's enable this, let the venues let the venues flourish, but do so sensibly and safely, and ring fence the audience group, so there is not going to be any cross-contamination or cross-contact should there be a case, for example. And again, what we've tried to do is make recommendations where there could be areas of contention. So things like contactless registration, which is something as a recommendation, but certainly not a legislation. So I think our colleagues from the industry should be rest assured that anything that we've put forward has been taken. We've taken everything into account. I don't think anything arduous will be imposed on anyone. I think this is going to be a very sensible way of getting our businesses back, and also just in the most effective way possible as well, so that we're not asking for things that are unreasonable.
Exactly, and the thing is, we all have to be reasonable. There might be things there that we've avoided putting in as well, but I think it's when it comes to from an organizational perspective, we have to be rational and reasonable, because we don't want to have a negative reputation for the industry because we create an event and we disrespect simple rational things because we think, oh, people won't care, and that ends up being a super spreader, because that's what everybody's waiting for. And we would like to see the industry open, and we'd like to see it open to everybody, and we don't want to be stopped at any point. So we urge everybody to be rational and to really look at all your processes and procedures. And I think to do this as well, Justin and Devi, we all looked at international case studies, because government wanted us to propose international case studies. There was a strong emphasis on that. Our government looks to international governments to see, and international arenas to see what is happening and how we can follow suit. Justin, do you want to share some of the case studies or some information that we gathered from there?
Yeah, so thanks, Debbie. Yeah, it's quite interesting, the case studies we selected. One of them was Caravan Salon, which happens in Germany every year. That's actually happened already this year, and it actually happened last year in 2020. That actually happened during a strong, a heavy COVID period where there was no vaccinations. So that was a great case study to have. So it was independent of vaccination rates. The Surf Expo in the US was also, pre-vaccination. We also selected some from the African continent. There's the Nigerian oil and gas event, DMG event, which Debbie, it's your company that organizes that, which happened with the early stages of vaccination, which happened. There was an event in Egypt, a trade event, which two of our, Patricia de Lille and our previous president was actually attended that, to actually show that there are South Africans there, and that and also to show that, we've got to be very careful in South Africa, because we're going to lose international events to the likes of Nigeria and to Egypt. So, our economy, don't just think because an event is happening here, it can't go elsewhere. And we saw that with, with SA Oil Week. I mean, that land was a South African event in Cape Town, and it landed up going to Dubai. So we just got to be very, government needs to be aware. They've got to be careful, because you're going to actually destroy the industry long term. So those were some of the events we chose. And obviously it's changed a lot. I mean, the international platforms have changed. The whole picture's changed quite a lot since then. It's opened up in the US. We're seeing events in the UK. There was an event that actually happened, the Dentist Congress in Germany, that actually is happening today. At Köln-Messe, it's the first day. They had a bit of a nightmare because they canceled. They said you don't need sneeze guards anymore. So they were up in arms against the exhibit. The stand builders say, why do we have to pay for the sneeze guards? But we are, so, in a way, we actually tabled that at the time, and maybe we need to update that in a way, because now things are really opening. Depends. I mean, in Singapore, there's nothing going on. It's a complete quarantine. Dubai, as you know, it's happening. World Expo, they've actually stopped you don't need a vaccine to go there, just a PCR test. So those are the kind of events which we chose across the spectrum, across continents, and across the world, to showcase what had been done during a lockdown, and some of them done during no vaccination period, when vaccinations weren't even available.
Exactly. And I think each of these shows that we showcased, we depicted, what was the COVID rate, infection rate in the country at the time, what is the number of vaccinations, and were there any cases as well that arose from it, and it was negligible as well.
Well, I mean, Caravan, there was 100,000 attendees, and there wasn't one reported COVID incident from that event. Caravan, and that was pre-vaccination.
Exactly. So that was really, really positive to support our cause. So Justin and Joel, in addition to the reopening proposal, I know that you both have been instrumental in ensuring government provides further relief for our industry, because we know that there hasn't been much relief. We still have no word. And do you believe that it's worth pursuing this with our new line of contact now that we've established this new force? I know we've been working with the Department of Labor. Who wants to take that? Joel, Devi?
Absolutely. I think we should spearhead it as part of the sort of demonstration and illustration to them of the plight. I mean, if you take into consideration the 18 months of forced closure without compensation, that what industry can survive that? It's ludicrous. So I think if we can use the era of the influences that we have now found, then that would definitely be one of the items on the agenda, very, very urgently.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so if I can just add, to Joel's comments there, one of the key things which we've driven through the SA Events Council is a survey on the TERS situation. So I know that there's been a lot of TERS that haven't been paid since October last year. And we really need to know what that is, because I think it's very hard to engage with Department of Labor or any department until you know how big the problem is. If you can't measure, you can't manage. And I do ask everybody to complete that survey. So I think once we've completed that TERS survey, let's engage with the same channels that we've opened. To go in another route, I think would be a mistake. So I think, but I ask everybody to make sure they've completed that survey.
Wonderful.
I mean, to Justin's point, the people that we're talking to at the level that they're at, they know who we should go to. They would be able to direct the traffic and to steer us in the right direction. So it makes perfect sense for me, for us to do that and to continue that.
Agreed. Like we're saying, we have a channel that's opened now that understands that the exhibition industry is a real thing. It happens, it is an actual marketplace. We've got a whole lot of education and a whole lot to do, but we have this channel and we're going to keep it open, even post-COVID, even post our reopening. It is a channel that will keep here to support our industry and will continue our partnership with government. Now, we've almost towards the end, and I know there's been a question on our chat here for a long time. Dawn wants to know, how is it that government can have an exhibition in Durban in November in 2021? We're talking about the IATF, and we cannot. Anybody wants to take that, or you want me to? Me? Okay. So, T.
No, okay, I think we can both take it, but maybe I should start.
Yes.
Maybe I should start. So I think for us, it's quite important that we have regulations that speak to our industry, right? Regulations that are specific to exhibitions. And I think to date, whilst the show is happening and we're all excited as an industry to support that show, the regulations are up in the air. The regulations are not cast in stone. So it'll be very interesting, kind of, and I'm not involved in that show, what are the health and safety standards implemented at that show and how we can use that to tie it back into the regulations that we've submitted. So I think for me, it's like I said, it's give us regulations that speak to our sector so that when we are at a certain level, we know what to do. Right now, 5 levels, we go from level 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What does that mean for us? So what does level 2 mean for us? What does level 4 mean for us? So I asked a question. We're currently at level 2. Am I right, Progeny? Sorry, I keep forgetting these levels. I've spoken so many times, right? But what does it mean for that show? So and 2 weeks ago, we weren't at level 2. We were at level 3. So surely there's planning and preparations that needed to be adjusted for that show to allow them to ramp up on the numbers in light of us being at level 2. But those regulations need to speak to us. They need to be gazetted so that everybody in the sector, in the industry, understands that when we are at a certain level, what does it mean for us? So I hope I answer your question. It's obviously a good thing for our industry, good thing for investment in the province of KZN. But I think it obviously we need to use that show to kind of really drive the frustration and drive the livelihoods that are really kind of damaged in our sector.
Agreed. I also think if you look at what happened this week with the SAT's tourism summit on Monday and Tuesday, when that was planned initially, there was only 50 people that were going to be allowed. That would be the accommodation, right? And then they managed to open it up to 250 people when it went down. So they weren't even sure how things were going to move. So even with this particular event, if the numbers spike, there's a possibility that they will accommodate, because it is a hybrid event. So there's a possibility that they're going to go, higher numbers on the virtual platform and lower numbers in person. So nobody is committing to anything as yet. And that is why our proposal to government is specifically saying, we don't want 250 people. We want 50% capacity at level 3. That's what we want. Even if we ask for 30% capacity at level 1, that is still a large number. That is still far more than 250 packs in a 10,000 square meter space or a 5,000 square meter space. And even that particular point in terms of capacity, people do not understand the difference between venue capacity and in terms of people capacity and the venue. If a venue is 5,000 square meters, the packs is not 2,500. So there's so many other accommodations that need to be taken into consideration. And this is part of the education that we talk about that needs to be done, which we've started the process on. So we're saying we want to go on percentages, not on numbers. We're excluding ourselves from events. We are a marketplace, and that is exactly what we're pushing. If IATF happens, that is great. If the numbers are happening, that would be really, really supportive. But I think we all need to communicate the messaging. We have your best interests at heart. As you all know, we all have day jobs, and we have businesses that we are all integrally involved in, and we need to make sure that it's alive and kicking. But our heart is in our business in terms of our passion for this industry. And that is why we're part of this committee and we're driving this. We're feeling very optimistic. Am I right? I'm feeling optimistic in terms of looking at our communication with government. We believe that we're on the right track.
We don't have
our next step.
We don't have a choice but to be optimistic, Progeny. I think as Jill said, 18 months later, I think a lot of people have really battled, and we have no choice but to succeed in this. For us, the next step is, and part of the journey is obviously doing that educational process of educating government on what we do, exhibitions, right? Taking ourselves out of the gathering cloud, right? Because in there, we obviously are with weddings, we're with funerals, we are with churches. So if we can take ourselves out of that, I think we would have won the war. And it looks positive because they now understand, oh, hang on a sec, we can't call these people gatherings, so they get that. But I think for them and to their defense is that now the issue is, well, how do we then separate them? And I think part of our proposal was to say, well, here's a set of health and safety guidelines. This is what we think you should be focusing on in terms of separating us. You go and do your command council consultation and your scientist consultation on all those kind of research, and then come back to us, right? So I think the next meeting should be driven on those bases. And I think, for me, I'm positive that we get some positive feedback in the next 2 weeks, I'd say. And that's my commitment. Yeah.
That's your closing commitment. Devi, I'm going to go to each of you now. I know we've run a little bit over time, and I thank you for staying with us and sharing our passion and appreciation. We really glad that you're here. Devi?
Yeah, I think when we open, which is going to be soon, I've got a request to everybody. I think in our industry and pre-COVID, Devi would have advocated for break a rule and do so wisely, and encourage asking for permission, asking for forgiveness rather than permission. Post-COVID, Devi has had a bit of a pivot, and I think my heartfelt plea is to everyone: we are going to get new these legislations. Let's stick to them. Let's adhere to them to the T, because any kind of malfeasance means that anything at any moment we can be switched off again, and we don't want to be in that situation. We want to be able to continue. So let's stick to the rules, and then let's also just be kind to each other. I think it's going to be, when we open, it's going to be tough for all of us. All of us have had stretched resources, whether it's financial or teams. And it's going to take some time for us to get event fit again, and I think we're going to have to all be very, very kind of patient and empathetic with one another as we start to open up and support our industry recovery.
Couldn't agree with you more. Thank you, Jill.
I think importantly, as business owners and entrepreneurs, we need to look to our own survival. Because without a going concern, we can't really offer anything to the industry community. That is in itself is challenging and difficult because of what we've gone through over the last 18 months. And I know of colleagues in the industry that have gone into real estate and are doing exceptionally well and are making more money than they ever made in exhibitions. So I'm not sure if we're going to see them come back. And that, from a supplier's point of view, and from design houses and from the community that basically formulates EXA, is a huge concern for me, because when we do start, even if you look at intra-Africa, that's happening in November, how do we service those stands if we're not in that space right now, we're not in that readiness? And to get into that readiness in less than a month is a tall order. Those stands are big, that event is big. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens and how that plays out, and to see the level of sensitivity that we're afforded as an industry by the stakeholders and the role players, because they can't expect us to be what we were before, because we're not. And that's the reality of the situation. And I think there's got to be kindness, as Debbie says, there's got to be understanding across the board, from pricing through to not fighting with each other, not backstabbing each other. We've got to work together to make events like this or exhibitions like this happen, so that there isn't an embarrassing situation where we are on a stage where we can't deliver, particularly because there is an international component to that show. And I'm speaking about that one in particular because it is one of the largest on the horizon.
Agree.
And then just to tell everybody, just to try and hang in there. I know it's hard for everybody, but what else are we going to do? This is what we know, what we love, this is what we do.
And as human beings, we will always need this connection of face to face. Let's admit it. Tisetso, you want to say something before you, Justin? Sorry.
No, I think maybe just to say, and this is my last comment, right? That on a day-to-day basis, we are engaging with government. You know, it's not as if you know, we do it as a by the by, right? It's a constant communication. There is constant emails that are flying backwards and forwards. So things are happening in the background, and I don't think that we should ever feel that as if we're not doing anything. So things are happening. I obviously, through the associations, you know, you can contact me there. If you'd like to chat to us, chat to me. But things are happening, and I think it's just a matter of time now that we see some sort of light being switched on. Right? I'm not going to say the end of the tunnel, because we're at the end now, and we just gotta switch on that light now, so that we all get back to some normality. And that's my final comment,
Thank you, Tim. Justin?
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. Yeah, firstly, thanks for the panel and thanks for the teamwork. First couple of comments. Firstly, virtual's dead, really is. I mean, I think that you always have virtual elements, and we need to be aware of virtual and the change in virtual. But I mean, the virtual is really, I mean, face-to-face is what it's about. So as an industry, we will come back. I don't think we'll come back in the same way, just because of you know, concerns. A lot of industries are decimated, other industries like the tourism sector, the beauty sector, all that sort of thing. So, you know, I think it's going to take time to get back there, but it's definitely, it will come back. I think we are going to have a lot of staffing problems in terms of managing, and resource problems, you know, from a financial perspective. And Joel, your point's very valid. We're not as what we were. But I think that everybody in the industry is not. So I think we just got to be very cautious. I think things will take time. And this IATF, obviously, it's a big thing. You know, let's see, you know, how that actually rolls out. And lastly, I mean, my last passing point is that it's an absolutely amazing industry, the exhibition industry, because I'm amazed at how many people have stuck in it. You know, I look at some of our staff here at our company. And they've hung in, and they're earning not earning a lot, but they're hanging in, and it's for the passion that we hang in. So it's an amazing industry of it's really beautiful. It's beautiful to work in this industry, and it's been really tough and been a lot of tears and sweat and all this sort of thing. Yeah, and you know, it sounds like I'm going to cry now, but it really is beautiful. What a beautiful industry to be. Thanks. Yeah, what a beautiful industry to be involved in. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Justin, and thank you to all of you. I have to reiterate that all of these people that you see here before you have their heart and soul in it. And like they've all said, we're doing this because we want to do this, because we believe in this industry. We're here to fight on your behalf. If you want to support us in any way, if you want to get in touch with us in any way, we are available. Just drop us an email, give us a call. WhatsApp for Business is a thing these days. It's not so personal anymore. And we're here. If you have any suggestions or people that you know that we can speak to, or any other suggestions you'd like to take us to take forward, let us know. We have to collaborate, we have to partner with each other to get going again, to rebuild. And together we'll be stronger. So we want you to know that. We're not hiding behind our computers. If we had the opportunity to be sitting in front of you right now, we would be. But do know that every single day, even the weekends at times, we are, we sunk so deep into this proposal, and we're trying to swim out of here and make sure that we all come out strong again. So thank you so much for your time, for joining us, for lending us your ear. And like I said, we look forward to hearing from all of you again. And thank you to all our team. And thank you to DMG and Sean and Taryn for hosting us today. We really, really appreciate it. Great to see you all, and have a fabulous long weekend. Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks, Progeny. Thank you. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you, everybody.